Okay, it is 11:35 and we are going to go ahead and get started. If any of your colleagues wanted to come and weren't able to, please let them know that we're going to be posting this on the Start Smart Hayes and Caldwell website as well as the YouTube channel. So there will be other opportunities for folks who couldn't make this meeting. My name is Megan Campbell, and I am serving as the Interim Home Visiting Program Director for Community Action, Inc. of Central Texas. Many of you know my colleague, Alex Milius, very well, who is typically here in this seat. And she serves as our Home Visiting Director. At this time, she's serving as our Interim Head Start Program Director. So in this sort of interim period, you guys are stuck with me, and I think we'll have a good time today. We have a great training set up today from some folks at ECI and the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District. Beginning our training today, we're going to have Amber Jensen, the outreach assistant for Hayes County Any Baby Can, and Jackie Gregory, the ECI outreach coordinator for Any Baby Can. And then as soon as ECI finishes, we will have Adriana Guerrero, special education coordinator for SMCISD, and Lisa Frank, the director of special education for SMCISD. I wanted to remind everyone that the next Start Smart Hayes and Caldwell meeting will be held on February 17th, and I hope to see you all there as well. This meeting is being recorded, like I mentioned before, and will be uploaded in the next couple of days. For anybody who's not here now, I would love if everyone can sign in on the chat with your name, title, and your agency or organization. That way I can just take some attendance. And with that, I will pass it over to Amber and Jackie.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to try to share my screen and share a PowerPoint with y'all. Let's see how it works. Yay, I got it to work. Okay. Anyway, like Megan said, I'm Amber Jensen. I manage outreach for Hayes County's Early Childhood Intervention Program. And I'm here with Jackie. She's our outreach coordinator for our entire ECI Any Baby Can program. And we wanted to talk to y'all a little bit today about what ECI is, who qualifies for ECI, and how you make a referral to ECI. So we start with, well, maybe that will work. What is ECI? So ECI is a statewide program with Texas Health and Human Services, and we provide speech, physical, and occupational therapy for children birth until their 3rd birthday. And they qualify one of 3 ways, either via developmental delay, a qualifying medical diagnosis, or a vision and hearing loss. For our families that do qualify via developmental delay, they're going to need a developmental evaluation, and those are generally provided at no cost to our families, or they're always provided at no cost to our families. And Jackie is going to talk just a little bit about the next couple of slides. And Jackie, just let me know when you want to move on to the next slide.
Perfect. And I apologize. Somebody must have rang my doorbell and my dogs are losing their mind a little bit downstairs. But happy Friday, everyone. Amber and I are so happy to be with you today. And Amber, I was going to ask you if you could go to the slideshow tab and start slideshow. And that way it'll just show the from beginning all the way to the left, from beginning. There you go.
Set up slideshow.
From current slide is fine. Nope.
What? I'm sorry.
Go to slideshow.
Slideshow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got this. You got this.
I can do it.
And then you can go from go over to the left from current slide.
There we go.
And then that'll just take us to the.
Maybe. Yay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. You got this. We're good. Yeah. So as Amber mentioned, and we understand that a lot of this is probably a review for those of you in this room. So we're going to breeze through some of this information that you've likely heard before. But if at any point you want us to stop and pause and go a little more in depth, or you have a question, please feel free to jump in. We're happy to elaborate a little more if needed. So as Amber mentioned, we're a statewide program under Texas Health and Human Services, and we are authorized through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Part C program. And Part C recognizes the need to reach very young children in need of services. So that's why we're here. I think that's why we're all here in this room together, right? We're all here for kind of the same purpose, to help families in need. I love visuals. And so this is a really great visual to just kind of show how we follow so many rules and regulations. So we follow rules and regs from the feds, I call them the feds, and from the state. And that all kind of trickles down to Texas Health and Human Services, which is our state governing agency. So all the programs in the state of Texas report to Texas Health and Human Services. They are really responsible for making sure we're doing our job. And we are all housed in a host agency. So Amber and I are, we work in ECI under Any Baby Can's umbrella. They are our host agency, but you all are likely familiar with other programs locally like Bluebonnet Trails or Easter Seals. So we are all kind of housed in a different host agency. And you can go to the next slide, Amber. All right, so this is another really great visual just to show you those ECI service areas and how we are kind of designated throughout the state of Texas. Our ECI program has grown, and so at Any Baby Can ECI, we cover Hays, Blanco, Llano, and a big portion of Travis County. But you can see that we're all covered. Everybody is covered, so we're all here to help. Okay, Amber, you can go to the next one.
And ECI is definitely, it's unique, it's different from other therapy pediatric service providers. The most important thing is that we use what's called a coaching model. And that coaching model is essentially, yes, our therapists are going to come out and they're going to provide therapy for that child, but part of the strategy is not just working with that child. We're going to teach the parent the strategies that we use. So that way that parent can work with their child on a daily basis. That little one is getting reinforced every day, those strategies to help improve their development. We also provide our services in the child's natural environment. So pre-COVID, that was in the home or in daycare. And we are providing those services on a limited basis in the home again. It's at this point, it's based on provider determination. The provider kind of determines which families need it the most. But even those families that aren't getting in home, virtual is always an option. And again, the most important thing is we are there to collaborate as a team with that family.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump into and just talk about our telehealth services here. If there is a family who's requesting in-person services, we will provide that service to that family. So we will make sure that we have a team available to provide in-person services to those families. And we are also providing the telehealth, which has been really a useful tool in helping to keep our little ones who have some pretty severe special needs and are very, medically involved to help keep them safe at this time. So we are doing this hybrid model currently, which I think there's been a lot of the word pivot that's been thrown around, right? Pivoted to telehealth services, but we've been very, very successful in doing that. So just wanted to give that tidbit here too.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
And that's me again. So early brain development is really why we're all here. I think we all probably in this room understand the impact of early brain development, especially in the 0 to 3 years. We know how impactful it is. And so these are just a few stats that I like to share with people who really aren't aware of ECI, but also our families that we're serving. So I have just a very short story from a family that I served a while back, who the mom was concerned with dad not having buy-in for ECI services, and she felt that she was just getting a lot of pushback from him, and couldn't really get him on board. He wasn't sure why we were in the home. So I said, okay, let's do a visit while dad is home. Let's see if I can, build some rapport with him, and we can chat and see if we can get him on board a little bit. So we did that, met with dad, and stereotypically this dad's this big, tough guy, he is the breadwinner of the home. He's full of tattoos and could appear to be intimidating to some people, but not to us, right? And so during this visit, I shared with him that in the first few years of life, 700 to 1,000 new neural connections are formed every second. And he broke down in tears, and that tough exterior just fell to pieces because he realized the impact that he had every second in his child's life. And so that's kind of the beauty of ECI Services, is that we get to meet families where they're at, and we really focus on that education piece in coaching and teaching, and working collaboratively with them so that they are a part of their child's journey, and every moment they recognize the impact that they have. So it stuck with me for a very long time, and it's a story that I like to share to just really show the power that we have, and our ECI providers are out there doing this work with our families. Okay, Amber.
Okay. And so, okay, so a lot of what we get, people ask who pays for ECI. And sometimes there's a common misconception that it's completely free. And while it is very cost effective for most of our families, it's not always completely free. But of course, the biggest thing to remember is that no child is ever going to be turned away from our program due to inability to pay. So while we are federally funded and we do receive state appropriations, our state and federal funds account for less than half of the funds that we need to successfully manage our program. So we supplement that by billing insurance, Medicaid, by receiving community funds through grants, and as well as getting donations from individuals and organizations. The final way we also help to supplement our budget is what's called a family cost share agreement. And it's for our families who have an ability to share in the cost of ECI services. And essentially it is a sliding scale based on the family's income and their family size. We complete that at the time of enrollment, and it is a monthly maximum that family is going to pay for services, no matter how many services they receive. So that's kind of in a nutshell how families pay for services. But again, like I said, if families are having financial difficulties, we are never going to turn a child away for inability to pay. And then how we make a referral to ECI. Essentially, anyone can make a referral to ECI. It's a common misconception that you have to have a doctor's referral to make a referral to ECI. And while that is a large chunk of our referral sources, anyone can make a referral. We get referrals from CPS, we get referrals from foster care agencies, daycare providers, or even if it's just a concerned parent and they want to call and make that referral. And it's actually a state rule that if you have a concern with the child's development, that you are required within 7 days to refer them to us. Now, we don't have to be the child's only choice, but we do need to be one of their choices. And then, so you make the referral, you call, you give us the information. The next thing we're going to do is a comprehensive assessment. And like I was saying earlier, there's 3 ways that that child can qualify for our program. Either a qualifying medical diagnosis, which there is a very long list of them on the Health and Human Services website. If they have a vision or hearing impairment. Now those are considered automatic qualifiers for our program. And so as long as we have that medical documentation, then we can skip the evaluation portion of the process. The third way they qualify is a developmental delay in one of the domains that you see on the presentation. So to determine that eligibility, if there is a concern just with a developmental delay, in order to determine eligibility, one of our licensed therapists are going to come in and they're going to use a standardized testing tool to determine eligibility. So that child will need to have at least a 25% delay in at least one of the 5 areas: motor, communication, self-help, cognitive, social, emotional. Now, if the child only has a delay in expressive language, then they do need to have a 33% delay.
Yeah.
And 33% delay to qualify.
Yeah, and I'll just step into and give a little information to an eligibility criteria here. So as Amber mentioned, we have a very long list of qualifying medical diagnoses, and we also work with families with children who have hearing or vision loss. And although those are considered auto qualifiers, they still do need to show a need for services. So we do complete evaluations for those kiddos. It just looks a little bit different than the kiddos who go through the developmental delay evaluation portion. So I just wanted to put just offer a little clarification in that there is an evaluation, but it just does look a little bit differently because we already know that there is a diagnosis present that has been shown to hinder development. And so that's why it's categorized that way. And this is all put on by the state of Texas and the rules that they've established for us. So the percentages and delay and all of this criteria are all a part of the rules and regulations that we follow. And as Amber mentioned when she was talking about referrals, anybody can make a referral to ECI. And a lot of times we're providing these presentations to our medical health professionals. And so I think when Amber said you are required to complete a referral, that's usually who we're talking to, our medical health professionals or social service agencies too, right? But once a child is identified with that developmental delay by their healthcare professional or other provider, then that's when that requirement to refer to ECI program comes in to serve as that catch on that and make sure that we are reaching those little ones in need of services. So yeah, I just wanted to step in a little bit on, and we do a lot of these evaluations throughout the week for our little ones. We have evaluation slots with a really great team of our providers. So there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of information here. We understand that.
And just so you'll know, Jackie is one of our early intervention specialists as well. So she is an expert in all of this. She's done lots of these evaluations, so she knows what she's talking about. Anyway, so once the child does qualify for our program, the next thing we're going to do is write up an individualized family service plan, or IFSP, for that child. So when the child has this evaluation done, there's actually going to be 2 people at that meeting. There's going to be one of our licensed therapists as well as an early intervention specialist. And that early intervention specialist is going to be the person helping that family write the IFSP to, get the family whatever services work for them. Now, we do have a state rule that the IFSP must be written within 45 days of when we receive the referral. And I know that sounds like a really long time, but we normally do not take the entire 45 days. Usually our families are seen much more quickly than that. But that 45 days is there as kind of a catch-all. the family has, difficulty getting off work, is having a scheduling conflict, then that 45 days is kind of a cushion that we have to get that done within those 45 days. Okay, and then the other thing that early intervention specialist is going to be helping that family with is writing goals. And our goals are very specific things that they want the family wants their child to work on. It's essentially a wish. So the early intervention specialist is going to work with that family to create those very specific, what's called SMART goals. And they're going to be very specific things that they're going to work on at their visits. And do you have anything to add about the goals portion? I know, Jackie, you've written way more of these than me.
Yeah, probably some of you in this room, maybe all of you are familiar with writing SMART goals. We also have to do them professionally in our organization. So many of you might have to do those as well. But yeah, no, I think you got the gist of it, Amber. I mean, we really work with the family to identify that wish. What is the main thing that they would like to focus on? What's their biggest concern? What routine can we focus on that is the most challenging for them? And with the team together and the family kind of guiding that, then we help that family turn that wish into a goal. And that just kind of drives the ECI services from that point on.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to turn it over to Jackie now, and I'm going to let her talk a little more with you all about, kind of developmental red flags, a few other things.
Yeah, so we'll just continue on with the ECI services. So after a child has been, Amber kind of went through the steps, right? Referral, and then a comprehensive assessment is completed. A child is determined eligible, and so then the IFSP is written, the goals are completed, and all of those things. And so then a team is identified based on that family's need or that child's developmental need. And our teams are comprised of early intervention specialists or EISs, and they provide service coordination or case management. It's kind of the same thing, but a little different in certain periods of their enrollment. And they also provide a special service to ECI called Specialized Skills Training. And this is a unique service to all the ECI programs. And then we also have SLPs who provide speech therapy, occupational physical therapists, sorry about that. And so we have occupational and physical therapists who provide obviously OT and PT. And then we have our DHH and our visually impaired teachers who provide those services for the kiddos if needed. And as we mentioned, we are providing telehealth and in-person services at this time. So you can go to the next one, Amber. Okay, so we are in the meat of ECI services now, and as Amber mentioned, we do a coaching, we have a coaching approach. These are all of the components that are involved in a coaching session with our families. They're engaged in every portion of that. And so that really helps to just really guide that service and help that family and child be successful in their journey with us. And we are constantly reviewing that little one's progress. So if at any time there is a need identified, perhaps there's a gross motor need, and maybe we need to pull in a physical therapist to have an evaluation completed for that little one, we're going to do that at any point a need is identified. And our case managers are working with those families on a consistent basis, 10 times a month if needed, however often that family needs us there, they are in the home with them. Okay, Amber. Are there any questions before we kind of talk about transition a little? I haven't taken a look at the chat. Okay, we know that this is that was probably a review for all of you. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about transition, right? And we use the term transition to refer to the period of time that we are preparing a family to assist their child in transitioning out of ECI services when they turn 3 and are no longer eligible for ECI, which is kind of a bittersweet time for us because we all get very, very attached to our little ones, and then we have to make a plan, and then we have to say goodbye. But our goal with the transition process is to make sure that there is no gap in services. So as soon as that child turns 3, they are set up and ready to begin whatever we have helped the family put in place and whatever they have decided on immediately. And so this transition plan that we established begins at age 2. And we sit with the family. We have an ECI, a Beyond ECI booklet that we provide to them so that they have something to reference during this, their next year with us, if there's something that they want to look into more in depth. But some examples of things that we put on this plan are assisting the family in looking into childcare options or other social service agencies. Perhaps a family still may need ongoing medical case management care, or they would like to know about some specific other schools that are in the area that their little one may be eligible for. But one of the big things that we talk about during this meeting also is helping to connect the family with their local school district to see if their little one qualifies for special education services. At this time, we get consent with the family to share information with the school district. So we will inform the school district if there are little ones who we feel are potentially eligible for their services. And that way they also are beginning to be looped in and preparing for that little one. So during this transition steps meeting, we talk with the family and ask them if they would like to set up a transition conference. Now, a transition conference is held with any entity really that could be a part of that little one's transition. But we hold this specifically today. We're in this meeting, we're talking about special education services. And so we hold this transition conference with our local ISD. We attend with the family, we sit with the family, and the local ISD representative will talk all about their program, inform the family of how they do eligibility, just really give them all the nuts and bolts about the special education program and the steps that will be taken moving forward should the family choose to participate in that. And at that point, if the family is interested, then we will share our records, IFSPs. I don't know if you can hear my daughter downstairs screaming a little bit. I think she's having a little bit of a toddler meltdown. Sorry if you can hear that. But we will share records with the special education department so that can really help guide their work as well and give them just some history on that little one. So it's important for us to work collaboratively to offer that warm handoff. Now, the transition conference with the local school district will happen no later than 90 days before that child turns 3. And again, that gives the school district a lot of, and I know they're going to go over this too, but that gives them the time that they need to take the steps to determine eligibility for those little ones. Our case managers enjoy going to the ARD meetings for our little ones as well. And we really hope at this point in our little one's services that the family is feeling confident and feeling like they have the skills to navigate these systems that they are going to be moving through and feel comfortable using their voice and using it loudly for their child, being their child's biggest advocate. That's something that our team really works on with our families too, and not holding their hand to guide them through these processes, but really helping to do it with them and coach them so that they are aware of how to do it independently when we are no longer working with them. So transition is a big part of our ECI service delivery, and it is the time when we have to say goodbye. So we also are making sure that if that child still needs occupational therapy from a private provider or physical therapy, that we're going to make referrals so that that little one can begin those services as soon as they turn 3 as well. So that was a snapshot of how we assist our families in connecting with the local school district, but it is a very collaborative process. And I think that goes along with our ECI model. We work as a team, not just with our providers, but with the family and with all the other entities who are involved in that little one's journey of services. Okay, Amber. So we just thought maybe it would be helpful to just have your eyes on, I'm not going to go through all of these typical developmental milestones, but we just thought it would be helpful for you to just kind of take a look at these. These are some of the things that are on pamphlets that we offer to families or things that we share out in the community so that families who perhaps may be in need of services can have something that they can reference. You can go to the next one, Amber. We'll just breeze through these ones. So these go all the way up to the 30 months. And then, Amber's computer is like, it's Friday, it's Friday.
Sorry, it was eager to keep moving.
That's okay. And then here are some developmental red flags, so to speak, that can be noted if there are any of these things that could possibly be occurring. It's a great idea for a little one to be referred to our program. We always encourage families and let them know that every child is different, every child is unique, every child develops differently. But if there is a concern in any area, when in doubt, refer to us. Let us go ahead and talk with those families and work with those families and see if their little one is in need of services, or if they have a medical diagnosis and perhaps will need assistance with that transition to the local ISD as well. Okay.
Okay, so I have here our list, well, our link to our list of all our publications. The How's Your Baby, I believe I sent that over to Megan earlier. I'm not sure if she shared it with y'all yet, but that will have those developmental checklists in them as well. I've also included in there our referral form for anyone who wants to make a referral. But again, you can find all of our publications at the website. All right. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions about, kind of our program, how to refer, anything else? No?
I did send an email earlier with attachments that included all of the handouts from both ECI and the San Marcos CISD presentation information. So if anybody is on the call and did not receive that, please feel free to reach out to me on the chat or in the email that was sent, and I'd be happy to forward that on. But I sent it about 30 minutes before the meeting started. So.
And if anybody else has any other questions later on, you think of something, you're looking through the information, feel free to reach out to either myself or Jackie, email, phone, whatever works for y'all. I'd be happy. Or if you have a parent that has a question, send them our way. We'd be happy to answer whatever questions they have.
There was a question that came through the chat. Gwendolyn asks, can a school staff member refer a child without parent permission?
So there aren't any consents in place regarding referrals, but we definitely would recommend maybe looping that family in because we will be calling those families. Amber calls referrals often too. And there are times when we contact families who are not aware that they have been referred, or perhaps they were given so much information that they didn't remember that they were referred. So in order to get that buy-in, it would be great to loop that family in for that referral. Amber, do you want to have a?
Yeah, what I was going to say too is that no, you don't have to let the family know, but we are a voluntary program and we do have to have the family's consent to do the evaluation, provide services. So it is helpful if you let the family know, because again, if we call the family and they're not interested, we can't make them start services for their child. So they're still the final say. So it's helpful, but it's not absolutely required. We do have families that don't know that we're going to call, but it is helpful to us if the family knows we're calling. Great. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think we're done with
I
that.
see. Yeah, I see the question that's come through. Is there a checklist for assessment tool, a checklist or assessment tool for behavior challenges for those older than 36 months? Our teachers have been asking for something like this. This isn't something that we personally have under ECI in our ECI materials, but we can ask around just in our circles and see if, somebody else has something that could be useful to you. And we'll let you know for sure. I'll put on my action list. All right, any other questions? Let me see, would the school system have something like this possibly?
So in our ECSC program, students could qualify at the age of 4. So if you're talking older than 3 years old, they could be 3 years old also. So we would have some strategies. We can look to see if we have something available to give specifically for behavior for 3 and 4 year olds that we use in our programming. So yes, we can look to see if we get something for you.
Great. Well, please don't be shy about continuing to add questions to the chat. Jackie and Amber, will you guys plan to stick around through the next presentation? Wonderful. And then if there are more questions that come through for ECI, we can kind of hold those till the end and kind of wrap up with anything else that comes up. But now I'd love to pass it over to Lisa Frank and Adriana Guerrero with the special education program through SMCISD.
Sure. And I know we've been sitting for a little over 45 minutes while we put up our PowerPoint. If everybody wants to take like maybe a 1 or 2 minute stretch break, refill your water or coffee or soda or something, we would love for you to just kind of get up and move around so your brain has some activity while we get set up. All right. Was that enough time for everyone to grab a drink? All right. So again, I'm Lisa Frank. I'm the Director of Special Education in San Marcos CISD. So where ECI stops, we pick up, right? So we'll talk a little bit about, go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about our partnership. So I love this quote, right? Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. We can't do this alone in the school district, just like ECI described, right? It's a partnership with families, childcare providers, as well as the school district. So I'm thrilled for this opportunity to all talk together at the same time to look at who does what. And it seems like we have some similar services we offer at different ages, and that it just takes a phone call to really understand what we can offer for any of the students that you're working with in the childcare setting. So we're going to talk about Child Find, which is critical, and that's really where we need your help. Talk a little bit about special ed overview, what our ECSC, it used to be called PPCD if you've been around a while. They changed the name to ECSC Services. That would be our 3 and 4-year-olds. And then speech and language services. And we'll probably spend most of our time talking about autism and what the characteristics look like, what are the strategies to working with them, and then any questions you might have. So I'm going to start and talk about Child Find. Obviously, you've probably heard this word before, and if you have not, it is our obligation as a school district to locate and evaluate children from birth to 21, and whoever resides in our school district. So one of the things you have to look at is this a student who resides in our district? If not, then we would refer them to the school district that they live in. So they have to physically live in our district. If you suspect a disability, regardless of the severity, and who might need special education or related services, that's where your obligation comes in to tell someone, right? You've noticed this, and then you would contact us if it's school age or 3 through 21, and then we would pick up that service. The law is IDEA. If you haven't heard that before, it's the Individuals with Disability Education Improvement Act. In the past, it used to be just called IDEA. They added that improvement in there. So now it's IDEIA is the law that we follow. All right. So in the chat, we'll have some interaction. We love in-person training. So I'd love to have feedback interaction. So if you ever want to turn on your microphone and talk, we would welcome that as well. Right. So indicate in the chat, yes or no, if your facility has a Child Find poster that we've provided for you. We're obligated to go out to the community and put these Child Find posters that explain the process and our contact information. So if you are a child care provider, would you put in at least yes or no if you have posters? I don't see any coming in yet. Okay. Yes. So no. Okay, Amber. So from this chat, we will write this down and make sure that we get those posters out to you so that you can provide that maybe in your entrance where parents come in, that they see where they can get that information. Okay. So just be sure that we know who doesn't have any that's on this training, or if you're listening to this as a recorded, just contact us and we'll get some for you. All right. So what is special education? Special education is instruction that's specially designed to meet unique needs, right? So that means that students who have a disability must be eligible and require specially designed instruction of some kind. And the IEP is what we use to design that individual education plan and related services or supplemental aids that the student would need. So that's in a nutshell what special education means. All right, there is a process in order to become eligible for special education services. The first one is the initial referral and assessment. If you want to click on that link, and hopefully that link will open. It did. Okay. So this is what the law says in the special education referral timeline. So when you get a copy of this presentation, that link should be there, and that you'll be able to look at, once you refer, what are the steps that will be required to follow in order to get the referral complete. We have 45 school days to complete an evaluation once the consent for the referral has been received. Okay. Obviously, we're going to get consent, notice of consent for the parents. We start the process. And then once the process is complete, we have 30 days to then have an ARD meeting. I think those are in some other slides. So if we'll go back to the other presentation. All right. And then once we have that referral and assessment process is complete, then we have a planning process where we bring the information to an ARD committee, where they will determine the individual needs of the student and develop an IEP. And then we will progress monitor. And then at every annual year, we're required to then review the assessment and determine if there's any additional information needed. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I think there was a question about whether 45 school days means 9 weeks. Is that the same for ECI? Okay, so they have calendar days, we have school days. Okay, so yes, it's 9 weeks of school. And the reason we count days is because some of those weeks may have holidays in them. And so we are obligated to exactly 45 school days. And we don't count days that are holidays or anything within those weeks. Okay, great question. All right, so I'm going to talk about each of these a little bit. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the evaluation already, right? We could get a referral from ECI, like you just heard earlier. A parent could refer a student or school personnel. So I know the question earlier was, do we need parent consent to refer? We do need parent consent to assess. So if a school personnel refers a student, we would still be obligated to get consent from a parent before we can do any evaluation with them. All right, and our evaluation is called a full and individual initial evaluation. That's called an FIIE. That is what we're obligated to gather all the information, write a report, and include in that report their present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. We call that a PLAF. And it outlines all of their current skill levels and areas of need, which then leads into the planning process, where we will write individual education goals for the student based on the assessment and PLAF information. And then we will collaborate with gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, related service providers to determine what services are needed, which is then done, next slide, in an ARD meeting. ARD meeting stands for admission, review, and dismissal ARD meetings. And so our first initial meeting would be required, like I said, 30 days, calendar days after the FIE is completed. I should say FIE completed. And then every year we would have an annual meeting that would look at the progress and determine goals for the next year. We do have transfer ARDs. If they come from another district and move in, then we'll look at the paperwork they come with and make any adjustments that we need to in that review or transfer ARD. Review ARDs can be held anytime new concerns come up, and we have those ARD meetings throughout the year. Okay, so there are 13 eligibilities that the federal government has identified as eligible for special education services. And you probably see some familiar words here, right? Specific learning disability, emotional disturbance, autism, intellectual disability. For those of you that are new or older, they used to call that mental retardation. It was an MR eligibility, and now it's an ID eligibility. OHI is other health impairment, which typically is for our ADHD or any other kind of medical needs. Sometimes will be under OHI, but ADHD itself is not an eligibility criteria. They would be OHI with a description of what that eligibility is. So I won't go through all these, but these are the eligibilities that they must have one of these and an educational need in order to qualify for special education services. So once we have that eligibility confirmed, and then we write an IEP and determine where would these services be best served, implemented. So our services we offer in San Marcos CISD would be general education classrooms with co-teach. The CT stands for co-teach, and ICS is in-class support. That's where our special education staff go into the classroom and provide the support for the student. We also have resource and focus. Those are pull-out services where the student will go to a self-contained setting and receive more targeted, individualized supports for academics, or focus is our behavior support. We also offer ACL, which is alternate learning, curriculum learning for our students who are intellectually disabled. That's an alternate curriculum with reduced content and expectations academically because of their functioning level and their IQ level. ECSC, again, is early child special ed. That is for our 3 and 4-year-olds. And in our district, we have all of them at a center called Bonham. It's at Bonham Elementary and Bonham Pre-K Center, and all of those services are provided there. We also offer speech and language services. We offer deaf services, which we contract with Hayes CISD to offer those services for any of our deaf students. Crossroads is our transition 18+ program. And in special education, they are eligible to receive services until they're 21 years old through their 22nd birthday. And so we offer, once they finish high school, we could decide that they needed additional transition planning, and we continue to offer services for that group of students. We do offer homebound services if the students are eligible for homebound. There is a form for a medical diagnosis that would require a student to receive services at home. And then related services, obviously, are occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling, in-home training, parent training. We offer those services as well. Questions about any of the services or what that process looks like? I'll just stop for a second there.
Hi, I'm Gwen Burton at First Methodist Day School and After School, and I was just wondering, ECI actually comes in and helps train our teachers that are working with the students that they support. Yes. And we have several students who are 3 who are receiving speech therapy and some different programs at San Marcos ISD who, because they need full day care, are here. Okay. And I was wondering how we could partner with the school district to get support for the teachers to empower those students in their everyday classroom the way they do with this therapist that they see for 20 minutes once a week.
Right. So are you talking about more language development type things or behavior support?
Yes, like I know that there's in-home support, but for some of the kiddos that are 3 that you serve, we see them more than their parents do. We see them from 7 to 6.
Okay.
So is there a way to do in-school support, in childcare support? I'm just throwing that out there.
So we don't provide staff members to provide that support in your facility, but we might be able to provide some training for the staff to support their implementation in your setting.
Okay, I'm connected to Adriana, so girl, okay. I'm following up on that.
Okay, great question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? All right, so moving on to our continuum of services, our goal is to always keep the student in the least restrictive environment, which for us, that means that they are in general education as much as possible with any specialized support to make them successful in that setting. So we start with, on this left side of the continuum, right? General ed setting with accommodations. We might have in-class support. We might have support facilitation, or co-teach looks like 2 teachers in the classroom, 1 special ed, 1 general ed teacher. And then you can see on the right side would be more restrictive placements where they're being pulled out of general ed for resource, self-contained setting, or even homebound. Those are our most restrictive settings, okay? As I mentioned already, right, we are obligated to implement the IEP based on our law, and it requires us to access general education as much as possible. So in our ARD meetings, we talk a lot about what is the least restrictive environment for that student. And for some students, resource might be the least restrictive environment because of their significant needs, right? But we always try to implement our programming in general education if possible. All right. So that's my part I wanted to talk about. I'm going to turn over some specific details to Adriana, who's going to talk next. But if you don't have any questions for me right now, I don't see any in the chat, then I will turn my microphone off and have Adriana talk.
Okay. Okay. Nope. Yeah, I don't know what. Let's see if I can project.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me loud enough?
Yes.
Thumbs up?
Okay.
Okay, great. Eliana Guerrero, Special Education Coordinator. So I'm here to just talk about that full continuum of services, right, for ECSC. We love acronyms for some reason in special education, so I'm just gonna apologize for that up front. But please stop me if anyone needs clarification, okay? So we, as a local education agency and school district, do offer any preschool students that do meet eligibility criteria of disabilities, right, with these supports and services. Of course, least restrictive environment, as Ms. Frank mentioned, is really important. So hearing again, Ms. Jensen, right, talk about ECI and those services, to me, I'm just super excited because I'm like, yes, because the earlier we intervene, everyone, like this means so much for that child in all domains, from social, emotional, to cognition, to speech and language, to motor. And so there are so many implications for their future, right, when it comes to early interventions and also that level of awareness. So that's what today is about, partnering to really talk about what it is we offer, but equally important, right? What is it that you should be seeing as daycare providers, right? What are some things that you need to familiarize yourself with, or what are the questions to ask, okay? And so let's start with Bonham Pre-K and their continuum of services. So Ms. Burton mentioned walk-in therapy. So you're right, we provide that at Bonham if a student is eligible. We also have classrooms, early childhood classrooms that are either half a day program for our 3-year-olds that are also eligible, or a full day program for our 4-year-olds that are also deemed eligible. And again, that is contingent on educational need as well as meeting criteria. So I'd like to start with speech and language because we know communication is such an important and critical domain, right, in development. And so it's really important to understand the role of a speech language pathologist. And so for them, they work on just developing communication, right, and helping not just with maybe the development of sounds or articulation, but also language and eliciting that, as well as dysphagia for swallowing, fluency, and voice disorders. But relative to daycare centers, right, and what you guys do as providers, it's really important to know that the natural environment will really elicit, right, a lot of really great language, and then having them really, you know, play with peers and interact. That is therapy in itself and the best form of it because it's natural, right? And then as adults, we can also really work on just making sure we correct, but not saying, oh no, you don't say it like that, but just again, showing them with our form of communication, oh, I see you said ball, right? And so that can also really help just reinforce some of those communication or speech and language skills that we really want to see throughout their developmental stages. Within the speech eligibility process, we also look at different areas. And by we, I mean our wonderful speech language pathologists. I am not one, but I will say that they have, you know, again, a very extensive an overview of what criteria should be established. And the first of which is, well, is there a communication disorder, right? And the second part, which is there an adverse effect, right, to their functional performance? So in a nutshell, how does it affect the child, right? Academically or on a daily basis, can they express their needs, right? Or if they want something, can they express that? Or are they frustrated, crying, pulling you, really, because they can't express that? And then last of all, do those needs, right, A and B that we just talked about, well, does that require specially designed instruction? And if so, right, then that would require the support from a speech language pathologist. And it's really important to reiterate that all of those different areas need to be met in order to, again, determine eligibility for speech services. Okay, this is one of my favorite topics. So difference versus disorder, right? Bilingualism is not constant disorder. So that's really important. And if you guys could just hear what I just did, that was an accident, but I'm also an emergent bilingual, right? There are times that we're going to have those differences, but it may not imply that those differences, right, are a disorder. There's often a time where there's a silent period, right? And it's when that child is soaking everything in. There's also a very common misconception that bilingualism will cause a delay in speech if you don't transition to English. That is not true. There's a lot of research to support that as well, but it's also fairly new within the last like 20 to 30 years, right? And so now we see more researchers also saying, are there differences in the acquisition, right, of that second language? Absolutely. However, right, it is really important for them to also have access to their native language to transition those skills to the second language. So just as a side note for everyone, just keep that in mind for any of your students who might be bilingual. And then vowels are different. Final consonants, right? They're not very prominent in Spanish. And then also it's important to consider dialectical considerations, right? Different regions of the country, as well as cross-linguistic effects, which would entail grammar rules, etc., and then customs, gender roles as well. And so in the bottom, you'll see, again, it's bolded, but sometimes looks like a disorder, might just be a language difference. All right. As a part of a survey that was sent out, I know we wanted to really hone in on different areas or topics that you would be interested in. And so what we did see, of course, the referral process, which Ms. Frank just went over, but also speech and language, which was covered briefly, and then now autism, right? And so I know that this is very important to intervene early if you have a child who, again, meets that criteria and you think that we're seeing those characteristics. So that brings me to a question for you guys. If you'll just type in the chat and just tell me, from your experience, and there is no wrong answer, but what are some characteristics that you're aware of related to autism? If you just take a minute and type that in, that would be appreciated.
This is where you get to participate and show us all the great things you already know.
I see limited eye contact. So that's, again, social relationships, language, with nonverbal communication, such as making eye contact, okay? Difficulty with social spatial awareness, lack of eye contact, exceptional number or letter knowledge, and then sensory processing differences, absolutely. Inability to verbalize needs. And that can be really frustrated for anyone, right? You don't know what I want. You don't know what I'm asking, or maybe I don't understand what you're asking of me. So thank you for participating. On this next slide, I'm just going to give a little overview. I know it's very wordy, but this is when you talk about eligibility and how that's defined in federal and state law, right? This is what evaluators, whether it is, again, a licensed specialist in school psychology, will look at. And so a student who's been identified as a student with autism, it means that there's a developmental disability that's been very significant to where it is affecting their verbal or nonverbal communication and social interaction. So some of you noted that, right? Like eye contact, for example, and it's generally evident before age 3, and it definitely affects that child's educational performance. And then other characteristics that are also associated can include engagement in repetitive activities, stereotypes, movements, resistance to environment changes, daily routines, or unusual responses to sensory experiences. So all that to say we have a lovely visual to really hone in and talk about these differences. So when it comes to autism, I know our evaluation team here at SMCISD really likes to talk about differences, right? Because that is how we will determine the level of support that the child may need, as well as the eligibility. And so you'll see that I did also reference Dr. Marilyn Montero, and she has been, again, really instrumental when it comes to identification of autism in the school setting. And so this is what we also use to help guide some of our evaluations. And so it's important to consider those differences in development. And so earlier on in ECI and their presentation, they showed you the framework of what it would look like with different ranges and all the domains. So just keep that in mind, whether it's cognition or social emotional areas or communication, knowing that there are differences, right, is really important. So you can have those conversations with parents as well, right? Well, I noticed that this is happening here, and maybe, you know, I'm concerned about maybe how he plays with others. It's difficult. He typically doesn't want to engage, etc. And so there you'll see the 3 different areas. So from sensory use and interest, language and communication, and then also social relationships and emotional responses. Now, this is again one piece. There's also that visual framework that will help us talk about brain styles. And so that may be how that child learns or perceives the world. So Ms. Burton earlier typed visual spatial thinking is also considered, you know, there could be a difference there. So that would be a brain style that we would also have to be aware of in order to adapt and support the student. So on this next slide, this also discusses autism eligibility. So we keep talking about educational need, right? And that is because, again, federal and state guidelines do tell us, well, if you're going to indicate there is an eligibility, there has to be an educational need. Why? Because this is how we develop our IEP plan, our goals and supports and programming services for the child. On here, you'll see that, again, we do serve students ages 3 through 21. And then also regarding that role of the autism evaluation process, it's really difficult to say autism should look this way. Excuse me. Because we have a wide range of spectrum, right, where kids can be very highly functioning, right? And their needs may look different from others. So understanding that is really critical.
Yeah, the spectrum for AU is a wide range, right? We have students that are served in our ACL program, which is our alternate curriculum, because they're very low functioning students with autism. And we also have very high students who are in gifted and talented classes that qualify as a student with autism. So we do have to determine what is the disability and what's the need and where can we best serve them. You good?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I do have some suggestions when it comes to organizational and regulation skills. I will say this is geared towards autism, students with autism. However, please know that this is also universal and it would be beneficial for all students at times. So knowing when it comes to, again, organizational supports, what can you, right, as a provider in a daycare setting, how can you coach parents and students, right, or even teachers? And so I would advise, setting up a workstation. So if it's like a puzzle activity, right, and just making sure that the child understands expectations, maybe with the more visuals you can provide, the better, right, and those expectations, or a first and then chart. First we do this, then this, right? And so there could be a reinforcer too, depending on behavior or needs or motivation that can be adjusted to meet the child's needs as well. You can have finish bins, file folders, a checklist, task strips. There are definitely more things to talk about, and I know we have a limited time, but I still wanted to outline some of those supports that are available that you can use. Your teachers can also really look at their level of support, supervision, or prompting So it can be verbal or gestural or physical, and that can really help, sustain or initiate tasks for a child. And then with regulation, in order to help them just self-monitor, and at this age, it's really important to know, as an adult, it is also our responsibility to help co-regulate with our students. But it is, again, our job to help support and calm them. And so identifying ways or strategies to help them with words or actions, or even an area where it's a blast go, or it's a fun place for you to come and hear music or have a brain rest, right? And even teaching them, okay, well, what does it mean to use our upstairs brain and our downstairs brain? And just having those visual supports to help. You have big feelings, and that's okay. So recognizing, again, the child and how they feel is really important when it comes to helping establish rapport, but also with those regulation supports and ensuring that they are meeting that child's needs and you're making those adaptations. But in the future, we do want to ready them to be able to be independent, right? So we co-regulate early on to raise social awareness, and then we help them again along with those functional skills, ensuring that they know and have those tools to pull from.
I'm curious, do you all use some kind of regulation area now, a timeout area or a regroup area? Well, timeout, I don't want to be punitive, but just some area that you have that they can try to get calm again, or use some stuffed animals or things.
To hug or
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What are you using now? So we have a safe, okay, Gwen says safe space cube. Okay. Those are great strategies because we roll those into the school setting as well then. And we've had great success with the zones of regulation, teaching the students to understand, if you're feeling this way, here are some strategies. If you're feeling this way, here are some other strategies, and helping them start identifying those emotions and feelings. And then what can you do about that?
Correct. And as well, it's important to think, okay, well, we're considering student needs, but what about our teachers? And so helping the teachers understand, well, as an adult, what is the expectation when the child feels sad? What is the expectation, and what are the tools they can use when the child is mad? And so I have also worked on some of those supports for Bonham Pre-K, along with Texas State University and the CARES program that's geared towards working with children that have autism, in order to ensure, again, we have those supports in place, that it's universal, that we all understand our approach is aligned, and then parents also have access to those supports, as well as literacy and background information regarding the zones of regulation. Right. Here are some references, resources that you can also explore, our website, as well as that document that was reviewed for initial referral timelines. Dr. Marilyn Montero, again, more regarding eligibility and how we assess, also using her recommendations and supports and assessment process. And then legal frameworks 18, this is a really powerful website for parents. And then it's also important to just let them know, look, as parents, if you do opt to move forward with an evaluation, you also have parental rights and safeguards, and you can find those on that website.
Are those links? We have time if you want to show them.
Yes, they're linked.
Okay.
All right, so for the autism, this again just kind of speaks to more regarding parent information, conversations with parents, which I really enjoy. Just, okay, well, how do we have these conversations, right? I see X, Y, and Z, but then maybe at home, they're not seeing those differences. Helping them also understand expectations at daycare versus at home may be very different. Right? We may have a lot more structure compared to the setting at home where there are more leisure activities. And so this will also help support any of those conversations and your understanding of autism spectrum disorders. And then legal frameworks here. Again, as I mentioned, you'll find in Spanish, English, you'll find the notice of procedural safeguards, as well as a parent's guide to the ARD process. And then also special education rules and regulations. There are also other languages that can be found here. It's really amazing to see there's like 17 different languages that they have available for parents for the notice of procedural safeguard. So this will, again, it's tied to TEA, and it will help parents understand that overview of safeguards in special education. And then also, well, what does it mean when it comes to child find, as well as parental consent and why that's important, right? And so we as a school district are not able to move forward without that informed consent, but it's also important to establish those conversations and speak to the why, right? The school or the daycare center may be recommending an evaluation for the child.
There's a question there. So how would a parent calling Bonham front desk learn about services for a 3-year-old student with special needs? Does the child have to be 3 by September 2nd?
Yeah, so as far as calling Bonham pre-K, and this is where, again, the posters, and I'm happy to go to some of the locations that don't have them either. We have a child find contact person you can call, and that would be Amanda Flores. There's also an email you can directly contact and ask any questions or concerns you may have, as well as a number so that we can answer any of those questions. And then our department number is listed here as well, 512-393-6933. And again, my name is Adriana Guerrero, so if there are any questions or concerns that could not be addressed by Ms. Flores in that referral process, you can feel free and contact me as well.
So the answer is it's best if they call this number or our office and not Bonham directly, because we will get that referral process started here in